Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, Bill. It has been quite a day, a long day, but I'm amazed at how well we've kept up. And we really owe a huge debt of thanks to the organizing committee for this symposium, and especially for its main leaders, Bill himself and Margaret.
That works now? Okay.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you. The title of our symposium today is Canada at the Crossroads. As you might expect, crossroads are dangerous places. In days of yore, it's where you would bury your criminals or expect brigands or thieves and other dark forces. And you might well look for a yellow brick road at those crossroads that might be providing safety. As Tony Keller has just outlined, it's been evident for a long time that our border, our cross-border to the south, has been a relatively open one. And we've had millions of Canadians and immigrants to Canada that have left for the United States. That picture of crossroads between Canada and the United States has changed considerably of late. And I think that's at the heart of our confusion, our fears for Canada, and it raises the question of how this could happen, especially with the country to the south that we thought we knew. As we learned from the first speaker, Bob Bray, we have had quite an aberration in the American commitment to what we might call the post-World War II architecture, a rules-based order. Well, if you've been following the tweets from, or the True Social of Donald Trump, you can tell that world is gone. And the question that rises from that, is this just a temporary thing? Is it just the particular occupant of the presidency? And along with that, how long do we expect this transition, this upside down world to continue? I think that Bob Ray suggests that it is an aberration, and he saw this as an aberration in the post-World War architecture for international politics and trade and security arrangements for countries of the world. But we might look back earlier than that to look for precedents for Donald Trump. If you follow him at all, you'll know he's a great admirer of President McKinley and largely has a view of a kind of 19th century nationalist with the America First program. He has, in that sense, been very uncomfortable with NATO, with the EU, with the trade arrangements, and he resorted to the 19th century methods of tariffs and, frankly, empire. And that's not new to the US if you follow 19th century American history. It's embedded, I think, in the American attitude to the continent and the Western Hemisphere of the Monroe Doctrine. And it's also part of manifest destiny as Americans have understood it. So it's an open question, I think, about how enduring this change in American policy will be. for those of you who follow politics a lot or look at political thought, we've got a thinker in the name of Niccolo Machiavelli who reminds us how in politics the whole world can turn upside down in a very short time. Machiavelli was writing to give advice to political leaders saying, you have to be ready for this. You'll be lucky if you just govern during a period where there isn't much change and there's a lot of habit and patterns, but you never know when changes will come in from the blue that will change the entire environment. And that's what makes the challenge of the political actor to respond to this upside down world so difficult. The issue also is how in Machiavelli's writings, he has a very colorful and classical view of this. He pictures accident or chance events that change your whole political thing as the act of a goddess, Fortuna. And he pictures the political actor as some forceful and dashing figure who can win the favor of the goddess Fortuna. But if we ask ourselves, how did Americans themselves know that this was going to be this kind of a change? We saw that, I think, in Trump's first term. And so it can't be said that DT, Donald himself, is a new phenomenon. He was impeached, but Congress failed to use the mechanism that the founder fathers had provided of impeachment through to its conclusion. And so you might say, as a matter of American institutions, that's quite a failure. But it's even worse that when it came to the public, he was reelected a second time in full knowledge of all of the actions that suggested his danger to the American Republic. So I think if Machiavelli were doing this case study and telling us what he thinks of it, he would have a dim view of the failure of Americans to protect their republic from a demagogue, essentially. And that's not a new story. Demagogues winning popular favor and playing on public whims is an old story. The second speaker we had today on the Auto Pact, Dimitri, was really a splendid talk, and he conveyed a lot in a short time. I think it's in a way, when you look back to the Auto Pact in the 60s that carried on for at least 2 decades in that form before we had a formal declaration on free trade. The amazing thing is that that Auto Pact was put in place when Canada was experiencing economic nationalism at a very high level. If you remember back, we had huge debates around foreign ownership and a branch plan economy in Canada. We had people like Abe Rothstein and Donald Gordon pushing for Canada being tough on that. We had Mel Hertog and the Committee for an Independent Canada, and we had, during the minority government of Pierre Trudeau and David Lewis, the creation of a Foreign Investment Institute and quite a number of other initiatives to try to protect Canada's economy from that foreign threat. It wasn't until the 1988 election between John Turner and Brian Mulroney that Canadians chose Mulroney and found ourselves in the free trade agreement. We thought and had confidence. After all, Brian was singing along with Ronnie, and we kind of had no reason to find that it would suddenly face a change. But suddenly, when we now have the US president saying we ought to be the 51st state, we find a shock in our assumptions of the partnership that we thought we had with the country to the south. The following talk given by Dan Bresnitz on innovation was a very interesting one as well. And I think he was right to warn us, don't go looking for Silicon Valleys and don't trust VCs, venture capitalists, who come in with investment, but with no intention to stay so long in the investment. And he's pointed instead at what might we see as local global linkages. And he gave us examples there of the Italian district in the north of Italy with the fashion shoes provision. And I can say from Malta, for example, we have a company there that has a world product mandate in cosmetic cases for all of the fashion brands around the world. You would never imagine that wee island there would have such a large piece, but it again developed with the local skilled workforce, a smart managerial team to develop to that state now. Taiwan is another example that we saw of success this way, where you try to draw on a level of competitive advantage in a given area that can be worked on as a potential strategy, and to link that towards government and the ability to create a supportive public policy to make that work. And China's done that in amazing ways, and so has Taiwan, which now, of course, is at the center of semiconductor manufacturing in the world. I want to underline that issue of the state because I don't think it came out as strongly in the presentations, but it's hard for a territory that isn't constituted with certain constitutional powers like provinces or the federal government to do this, to follow this local global linkage. It makes a big difference if you can do something and that the local authorities can get the public behind a strategy of prosperity and equality in a given area. So jurisdiction is an economic resource in itself. If you don't have it, like an island like Cape Breton, you're in a much weaker position to try to develop a strategy for an island on the East Coast, as Prince Edward Island is. You'll see that same contrast between Iceland and Newfoundland. Newfoundland constantly lamenting they don't have the sovereignty of Iceland, and if they had it, they think they'd have the same economic fortune. But it's not a guarantee by any means to have the ability to do innovation in the manner in which Dan has outlined for us. I think in respect to Canada, we have to ask, do we think the current Carney policy for economic development in Canada is adequate for an innovation strategy. I don't think so. And you'll see if you consult the thing that once again, if you consult the premiers and the other stakeholders, they revert back to a resource extraction industries and transportation corridors to take our natural resources to market. They're immensely expensive. They're placed upon the back of taxpayers quite often. We have a hard time getting a private player to put out for that. And I think we probably need a much more nuanced policy for encouraging innovation in Canada. Our last two speakers shifted from an economic focus towards social areas. And I think to speak of them both together, they make the case that with respect to Medicare and to immigration, Canada has placed great values on this, about being a country that built a public welfare, a public Medicare system from Saskatchewan and then taken up later federally, and our pride in being a country that welcomed immigrants from around the world. And both of them have come up with conclusions that suggest that public policy, our own government's choices, have weakened these core values and made the question of Medicare not what it could be, because we're not putting the financial resources behind it. And we're also failing to confront the privatization of medicine here and the private equity companies that are moving in to Canada and seeking to play a stronger part. And then I think with both of those cases, Raisa gave us a very inspiring case for living up what we do in our taxation for Medicare. The other irony, which is amazing, is really around immigration, is unlike the countries in Europe or in the United States, which have developed a more anti-immigrant politics because they're faced with a migration inflation. In the case of Canada, our latest shift from a pro to a more anti-immigrant position is directly related with the failure of our own government, federal government policy, and in particular, the temporary workers program and the student visa programs. So we've had today quite a number of very interesting and complicated fields. It would be a big job to tackle any one of these if you could take them one at a time and get them right. But we don't have that luxury. All of these issues confront the current government now, all at once, all requiring responses. The thing is complicated again because don't forget Goddess Fortuna, there could be anything coming in thrown onto the government's agenda. But a lot of what we now know is also requiring immediate responses on defense, on climate change, which, by the way, is very much compromised, I think, by our fossil fuel promotion strategies. And of course, the question of separatism, which has dominated our politics for a long time. So I guess my last suggestion to you is have mercy on our politicians. Recognize how tough this is to address all of these all of the time, and to say and to suffer the constant criticisms that both the media and we ourselves make on our political order. So I'd like to say at the end of this day that I wished Carney well with his new majority, and I hope he can carry through half of what he aspires to do. I hope that we will do our own parts with respect to that, and that we will require of our politicians that they have stature and speak substance to our issues. We have had a long time of what Carney has called showboating. And he's right that that's got to stop. And we've got to recognize these are serious issues. So in conclusion, I would say we began with singing the national anthem, and I would say now simply to join with me in saying, "Long live Canada."